Thank you so much for joining me, guys. This is going to be like really interesting conversation with one of my favorite humans from the timeline. We've actually known each other for a long time, but we've encountered through events or the stuff that she gets up to through the timeline on Twitter. But it's just, those people that you just like, your energy kind of matches. Hafsa is one of those people. I don't want to go on and on of how much I adore this individual. She supports in everything I do. I would post a picture and say I have an event. She will sign up. Her name will come up. One of those girls. So I want to say thank you so much for supporting the stuff that I have been doing. I can't wait to support the stuff that you are doing, and also have you as my first guest on my YouTube. Like, seriously. I can't even believe I'm posting on YouTube. Who is she? I don't even know her. So she's one of my first guests. I really want to bring different type of flavors and energy to you guys. I adore these women. They inspire me. I look at them, I'm like, you might not get recognition from people, but I absolutely love what you do. So yeah, Hafsa is one of them. She's my first guest. Let me not bore you with my intro. I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Hafsa Issa Salwa, actually full name. By day, I work in the beauty industry and marketing, but I'm also the founder of Mind Pretty Soul, so a platform dedicated to promoting health and wellness. And I also do a podcast for Mind Pretty Soul as well. And my aim with Mind Pretty Soul is, as well as promoting health and wellness, but it's just to kind of equip people, mainly women of color, with the tools and the knowledge that they need to look after themselves, to be healthy, to be fit, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything really. And it's all about promoting self-care, wellness, health, and really prioritizing yourself. And I started that after going through a breakdown a few years ago, a mental breakdown. And it took me a while to recover from that and to get back to my old self. Actually, let me not even say old self. I got back to a better version of myself, actually. And I thought, okay, I've been through all of these things, and the people that I know aren't talking about it. People like me aren't really talking about things. What can I do to help others that might not necessarily feel that they're comfortable to come out and talk about these things? So I thought, okay, it's about time that I talk about these things and help people, instead of just kind of staying silent, really.
And waiting for someone else to do like a platform on it or anything like that. You just thought, I've experienced this. How can I heal myself and also help others to also heal? And it's very interesting that you mentioned your breakdown. Can you elaborate a little bit on the breakdown? Because personally, when I have breakdown, let me tell you something. I am gone for a few months, just like literally on the floor. I know it's personal. People don't like talking about these things, but I literally would be gone. It could be a trigger from losing a good friend of mine, or it could be like not getting that job that I wanted, or just looking at myself and saying, oh my God, what have I done? Being the worst self-critic. So I have my ways of dealing with it. Like, how do you cope with such big breakdowns?
So for me, in 2012, after my cousin passed away from cancer and I was at uni, I was living on my own at the time. I had stress going on from uni, essays and assignments, the stress of actually managing your own house and living on your own, having family there, but they weren't necessarily there physically at the same time. So all of these things, I guess, accumulated, and then it's like a bottle, I guess. It's like a bottle that you kind of shut really tightly, and it just bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. And then once once that straw breaks the camel's back, it explodes, doesn't it? So I found myself really anxious all the time, in a pit of despair. I wouldn't leave my house. There were times where I wouldn't even leave my bed, and I would just be in bed all day for weeks at a time. You're like, when I say breakdown, I mean like you've completely broken down. You're not showering. You're not cleaning after yourself. You're not. You don't even have hair. Your hair is like a matted mess. Like this becomes a book. It becomes a book, innit? Like, and for me, it was so bad for me, and it's crazy to think now because it's so different to how I am now. But back then it was so bad that I remember my hair became so matted that I just couldn't even manage it. I couldn't even use a normal detangling comb or brush. I was just like, I've had enough. I got a pair of scissors and I just started hacking away at my hair.
Yeah.
That's how bad it got. And so for me, I thought, okay, I've had enough. I just wasn't normal, really. I just wasn't my normal self. And every now and again, I'd feel suicidal. And what stopped me from being actually doing what I was thinking all along was, actually, Hafsa, there's something at the end of this. I was really scared when I started to get those suicidal thoughts, and I thought, okay, now I need to act, because I don't actually want to die. Like, I don't want to die. I actually want to live.
Yeah.
Whereas, unfortunately, other people that do die by suicide, for them, that's the only way that they might have out of this, that they probably feel. But for me, I felt, okay, I just want to live. I really want to see the end of this. And I called my GP. I actually remember it to this day. I spoke to my GP on the phone, and we got on the phone, and I just burst into tears when I was speaking to her. And it was just like a flood of tears. And she was on the phone really emotional as well. And as a professional, I'm sure that she's probably dealt with lots of people with mental health problems and depression or anxiety. But I thought, wow, she's actually emotional as well. So then eventually I went in to go and see her. She referred me to a CBT therapist. I also went to a psychotherapist. I did therapy and counseling. So that really helped me gradually as time went on. And then also my family, my mum was there for me. My mum really helped me. My dad, my siblings, everybody was really there for me. My mum cooked for me all the time, helped me out. It was really a group effort. I had really a lot of people there for me to really help me, and that really helped me pull through.
That makes like a massive difference. I think with the therapy that you've mentioned, a lot of people are skeptical when it comes to therapy. They're like, what is the point? It kind of makes my situation even worse. And I feel like when you do go to therapy and you experience a lot more emotions, or you're getting, everything is becoming more intense, sometimes it helps, because you just need to stick to the actual therapy. You need to do however long they told you to do, because some people, they do start the therapy, they feel like they're overwhelmed with emotions of everything that they're experiencing, and they're like quickly just like, oh no, therapy is just not working for me. And you're just like, please, if you are doing therapy, if you're thinking of doing it, I would recommend everybody to go and get themselves some support. And I am so glad that you actually went to get some help. And if anyone is watching this video and you feel like all the symptoms or some sort of what is the word I'm looking for? If you feel like you're not being yourself mentally, if you feel like you're not looking after yourself, there are a list of things that obviously are triggering. But if you feel like you're not okay, it's okay. And it's okay to also get help and seek medical help, because sometimes if we cut ourselves, we're quickly to say, oh my God, I'm bleeding, let me go to the A&E and let me get some help and blah, blah, blah. But when you haven't actually had a shower for weeks, and you're not cleaning your room, you're not doing things that make you happy, you don't want to talk to anybody, you're slowly closing yourselves from the outside world, it is a sign, that things are not okay. So please do get help. And it's funny that you mentioned the hair situation. I've been there where mine wasn't as bad as yours, and I am so sorry that you had to go through that. And I'm so glad that you had family to support you. It just makes me happy, because if you think about it, there are girls or boys who go through these things, but the actual problem is usually their family. So for them to heal, and for them to not be able to eat or sleep, is even like bigger the problem compared to our problem, because for them, they're actually inside the house. Now, if the house is the problem, if it's the relative or the husband or the partner, everything.
If that's the thing that's causing your problem as well.
Yeah. Is there any podcast or videos, or other than medical support, that you have received from the NHS? Like, is there anything else that helped you in your journey that hopefully someone is watching?
Yeah. What really helped me was, so I live in the Camden Borough in London. London. So I live in the London Borough of Camden, and there's an organisation called Nafsia. So they support women and men in the Islington and Camden boroughs, and they do this thing called intercultural therapy, and they are amazing. Honestly, They are a lifeline for so many people, and their aim is Nafsiyat, so NAFCIYAT, Nafsiyat, and they basically do this discipline called intercultural therapy. And so they have therapists that speak a range of languages from Arabic to Amharic to Somali to Farsi to Urdu to Hindi, so many languages, and their aim is to be there for people that don't necessarily speak English, and they also need someone who might be on the same level as them in terms of, they might necessarily, like for example, a Somali woman might want to speak to someone who's her peer, as opposed to your usual middle-class English lady who's a therapist. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you might not necessarily feel as comfortable sharing the issues that you might be going through, you might be experiencing with someone who you might not necessarily relate to because they're not your peer. So they have Somali therapists. They also have Asian therapists, Black men who can work with other men, and so on. And they really helped me. And I had an Asian therapist, and she was a Muslim woman. So for me, I felt that I really wanted either someone who was Black, ideally, although I did have a lot of therapists before in the past who were English, and I found them really great. But there were certain things for me that I really wanted to broach and to cover that perhaps my other therapists weren't necessarily understanding. I found that their advice didn't necessarily come from a place of understanding, because they didn't necessarily come from where I came from. Their experiences, my experiences, they couldn't relate to. So I spoke to a woman who was amazing. She really helped me. And they do up to about 3 free sessions, or maybe more now, but it's probably changed since I last went there. But they were a lifeline for me. They were amazing. And so anyone who's living in Islington and Camden, I'd absolutely recommend them.
I'll put the link below, just in case you're from that borough, and also the NHS help for mental health link will be in the description below. So if you do, even if it means having a look around and looking for the symptoms, and see like if there's something that you should be checking, then I put the link so you can also read it yourself. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's actually like, whereas for me, it was never that level. It was like intermediate of that. And what had helped me was just literally my family. I'm so grateful for my mom. I think at the beginning it's hard for, I'm Somali, for Somali parents to see you different. You know, I am one of those people, I'm like on the go. I'll meet Hafsa today. Tomorrow I'll meet Safa. I'm like living my best life. I'll go travel. Literally, I'll see a chunk in my bank. I'm like, we're going to Italy. We are going to Rome. We're going to eat food there by myself. And just went from being that person to like crashing down to being in my room and not wanting to go and leave, close everything. I want to be in my bed. I don't want to talk to anyone. It was literally not the best of experience. And Alhamdulillah, I had Quran, like my mum and my grandma, they got like these people to read Quran. I don't know what it's called, but Quran Sar, we call it in Somali. And Alhamdulillah, that helped me a little bit. Then I started to slowly go out of the house and then deal with the hair situation, where your hair is just like, I remember sitting on the floor and not even bothering that my hair was in that state. And my grandma was just like, she took nearly 2 hours just untangling my hair. It was not the best of experience, and you forget everything. Responsibility, where like went from never being in the house to being in the house and not wanting to leave the room. You know, it was so bad. So yeah, it's not many people speak about it, and I think if you're known to be on social media like optimist or whatever, people don't actually know you're going through that. They don't know what is happening behind. I would just say, don't ever look at people on social media and think that, oh my God, like they're having the best time. You never know what's going on. Don't idolize people on social media. Like, don't do that. It's not. And usually I don't come on the timeline and talk about these things, mainly because when you're going through those things, for me, I think some people might find it helpful that they share it online and whatever. But personally, I don't find that useful or helpful for me, because I'm like, it just adds too much to my healing process or dealing with the actual problem. So I just pull myself from social media, deal with what I'm dealing with, and then just come back and continue what I'm doing. And I think my followers, thank God, understand that. I do withdraw and then come back. They'd never ask me like, where have you been, or what? Because I don't talk about my personal life like that. So it depends on what kind of social media. What about your social media? Has it impacted your social media when you withdrew or when you was going through something?
Yeah, so funnily enough, when I was having my breakdown, I was in the midst of what I would call back then relative success with a blog that I started called Muslimah Beauty.
Yeah.
And right at that moment, I had won awards. Actually, sorry, I'd won one award. So I'd won an award from Procter and Gamble. It was getting featured in magazines like Cosmopolitan, Marie Claire magazine.
Wow.
I was getting a lot of publicity from that. But for me, that was secondary to everything. I was literally trying to survive. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I do not have any motivation to write anything for this blog. It's getting so much publicity. Let me just continue to maintain that and to continuously put my message out, which is to show that Muslim women, we're just as into beauty as other people are. It wasn't necessarily, we didn't have a voice as much, though I didn't really find that there were as many Muslim women like me who were writing about beauty back then, at least. That was almost 10 years ago now. But for me, I just felt, let me continue writing. I need to continue. I'm getting a lot of momentum. Let me keep it up. But I just didn't have any energy. I didn't have any will. I didn't even have any creativity. I've always been a creative person. And so when you are a creative person and then you find yourself blocked, it really frustrates you because you know what you're capable of. And so
I should be
because you're like, I know I can do much better than this, but I just don't have it in me right now. I'm being blocked. But instead, what I should have been thinking was, right now, that's not important. That's okay. Just exactly, relax. You know, like that's what we say in Somali. Yeah, exactly. And I should have done that instead of being hard on myself. Yeah. And so I think I took a long hiatus from blogging. And then what that did for me was ultimately all of the PR contacts that I had, naturally they're thinking, well, she's probably not as active anymore. I lost them. Readers didn't necessarily have as many because naturally if you're not consistent, your numbers go down. And what I really appreciated though was every now and again when I could muster up some creativity to write something, I would have people email me or message me and say, oh, I love your blog. I really missed you, you know, oh my God, you're back. And
that's the nicest thing. There's always one person.
So yeah, and that's what kept me going. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to pressure myself. I'm not going to look at what everybody else is doing. I'm going to literally just follow my own path. I'm just going to face my front and do what I need to do. I'm not looking at everybody else. They might be consistent, but they have different variables in their life to me. Right now, I'm going through a breakdown. Right now, I'm going through literal depression. I need to focus on myself.
Yes.
So I got out of that and eventually I did my master's after that. And then I got a good job eventually, again, within the beauty industry, and then was told that, okay, we know that you write a beauty blog. We just don't want you to attribute anything to being our opinion, basically. So we want it to just be your opinion. And I thought that's fair enough. But again, that kind of hindered my creativity again. I'm thinking I've just gotten out of a real mental funk. Yes. And I'm ready to write about it again. I finally have a job in the beauty industry. I can talk. I've got money now to buy beauty products that before I was a broke student, I didn't have as much money to buy stuff and do all the things that I wanted to write about. But again, that kind of hindered my creativity because I'm thinking, oh shit, I don't want, pardon my language, sorry, but I don't want my managers or my company to look down on my work and say, oh no, you wrote that, you don't want to get into trouble. And then eventually I just thought, I fell out of love with it eventually, I think, but now I'm getting there.
Slowly, yeah. I think that you've mentioned the whole people telling you don't share this, or you linking your creativity to work, because for me it's not that I was told not to do it, but at the back of your head, like let's say I do activism work, so I'd highlight police brutality, or I'll speak of gender inequality, or I will speak of like, you know, stop and search, things like that, or budget cuts from the government, and things which makes some people feel uncomfortable at work. And at the back of your head, you're always thinking, oh my God, am I overstepping? Am I going to get a job in the future if I continue what I am doing? What is going to happen? And somehow it does limit you. Like, you're just like, oh my God, if I actually go and say Black Lives Matter online, there might be a potential employee that be like, actually, all lives matter. Why are you campaigning for Black Lives Matter? And you're like, oh my God, you want to fight. You want to fight. That's what you want to do. So for me, for what you're going through, I just at the end, I just felt like I don't care anymore. I got to the stage where this is who I am, these are my values, this is what I stand for, this is what I fight for. If you're gonna love, not even love, if you're gonna hire me for my skills and what I do outside of your job. I will never mention my job. I never come publicly and mention where I work and, you know, stuff like that. Because people, have you seen lately there was a sister who was talking about trading, and people contacted her employer and ask information, and people will find where you work, you know. And personally, I don't talk about that online, but I think sometimes for creatives it's really hard because you're trying to find the balance of, yes, I want to do all of these things, but then at the same time, what's going to happen to my employment? Because it's like a credit score, you know. It's like you're messing up your credit. For us, like our CV history.
Exactly. And you know, one thing I've noticed though is that you don't even want to work for a company that doesn't value the things that you value.
Yes.
If you have an issue with something like Black Lives Matter, which when we talk about it, Black Lives Mattering, why on earth would a company take issue with the fact that people are having genuine grievances with the fact that Black people are being disproportionately killed? Yeah. You know? So you think, okay, fine, I'm weeding out the type of employers that don't value me as a Black person then. Yeah. So your loss, I will go elsewhere. I'm going to go and find somewhere that values the fact that I am Black and the fact that I'm having genuine grievances with these issues.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you about, you started your new podcast, which I absolutely love, and I was lucky to be part of it, and I was a guest. You really need to out, guys. When you contacted me, I was so excited, and we had amazing conversation. And I just wanted to link that to you and I both being on social media for such a long time, and we can call ourselves OGs, right? It's been 10 years, so we are OGs. We've been on social media for a long time, but why the podcast now? And how did you find starting something now where people have been doing it for a long time, blah, 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 and you're just like, okay, I'm going to start my podcast.
Yeah.
And, start a new journey. How are you finding that right now?
Yeah, so I've listened to podcasts for years. I've always loved podcasts. For example, I love the Joe Rogan podcast. There are loads of podcasts that I listen to, and I'm seeing that in the UK there's a surgence of UK-based podcasts as well now, and I'm listening to them as well. And I love that it's such an interesting medium, and podcasts have been around for years anyway. I've listened to episodes from like 2003, for example. BBC were doing podcasts back then. So yeah, and BBC does great podcasts. I love them. They do like Desert Island Discs and Women's Hour and things, and they do really cool
Women's Hour is amazing. I remember writing a whole paragraph to them. I love their work. It's really, really
they're amazing. Honestly, Women's Hour, if anyone's listening, you should listen to.
I'm going to add that to my description for notes for people. Yeah.
Hour, worth listening to, absolutely. So they're really good. And so I thought, for me, what is a medium that I'm comfortable with? Video, I'm not so natural in when it comes to video, because I'm learning. I'm getting there. Lately I've been doing like cooking videos with my friends and stuff, and I'm getting there. But for me, I've always loved to talk. I've always loved to talk. Not that I love the sound of my own voice, but I love to talk and to share my opinions, and to also give women the floor as well, and just to showcase different stories. So I thought, okay, I don't listen to a podcast that I want to have myself, you know, like there are certain things that I want to touch on. I want to give the voice to women of color. I want to talk about things like wellness and health and fitness and everything that makes your soul sing, beauty, anything that boils down to the essentialness of what it is to be well and healthy, you know? And I think wellness is an industry that is very much a gentrified industry. I remember when we were on the podcast episode, you were talking about how coffee is very gentrified. I find that wellness is very gentrified as well. And so I think that, I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow, this actress, she has a platform called Goop, and so they have a documentary on Netflix on that as well. So it's a really interesting platform, but I find that it's inaccessible for a lot of women of color. It's also inaccessible for people if you don't make a certain amount of money. And so I don't want people to assume that if you want to be well and healthy, that you have to spend a fortune on it. No, there are certain free. Exactly. And there are resources that are free for you to turn to. So for example, meditation, you can find that for free online. Herbs and spices and superfoods and all these things that don't necessarily burn a hole in your pocket. And I just want to talk about things that are important to us, but without making it look like it's inaccessible. I just do not want people to think that if I want to be healthy mentally, physically, in every aspect, I don't want you to think that that's not for me. So for me, my aim is with the podcast, I just want to speak to women every episode. It's a monthly episode where I get to speak to a woman every episode and just talk about things like mental health. On my very first episode, I spoke to a really good friend of mine who created an app called Happier You. And we talked about Happier You. And we talked about how difficult it was to find accessible, affordable therapists. And for her, she struggled to find a therapist for her mum who was affordable. So she created an app that's totally free for people to use. Then in my second episode, I spoke to a really, really favorite influence of mine called Safia Tasneem, and we talked about beauty. And then I spoke to you as well. So for me, I don't want to have a podcast that people listen to and think, oh, these I can't relate to these things. No, I want people to listen and think, these are my peers. I want people to listen to it and think, actually, I can take some of the things that they're talking about on board and build a healthier life for myself, a better life for myself. I can take those small little things that we've talked about, whether it's CBT, whether it's self-care in the middle of a pandemic. So just to help people and to equip them with everything that they need, really.
You started this, obviously, and I've started my YouTube, and it's like in the middle of a pandemic. What advice would you give to people who are watching, who are putting, because I believe it took you 4 years to start this podcast?
Yeah, because I created Mind Pretty Soul actually when I was working at a really big company. At the time, I'd gotten a graduate placement at the Estee Lauder companies, and I started Mind Pretty Soul as just a newsletter. And then it's kind of going back to what I said about creativity. I was just like, oh, I'm not really getting the creative buzz. And then I relaunched it, and it took me a long time, 4 years, to really actually do what I always wanted to do, really.
What advice would you give to people who are putting that project? It's not necessarily like a podcast, you know, maybe your passion is to start like a book club, or you want to start like a girls chat, you want to open your own gym, or you want to be a makeup artist, whatever it is that you want to do. There's always a mind, there's a little thing in your head that says, oh my God, what is the point? You know, everyone else is doing it, you know. It's like, why would I do this? So for me, I would give advice to people who are watching this video. Please, please, please just get your notebook and start writing, and start with what you have, and you can always develop and improve. So for you, what advice would you give to people who are putting that project behind and saying everybody else is doing it, or I can't do it, I don't have the money for it? Or do you think it's easier to start podcast?
You know, the advice that I would give to everybody, if they have an idea that they might not necessarily be too confident in putting out there, or they're a bit hesitant, I would say, okay, an idea has probably been thought before. If someone's not doing it already, they've thought about it. You're probably never going to be the very first person to do something, you know. I'm not the first person to do a podcast dedicated to health and wellness, but I'm the first person to do it with my own spin.
Yeah.
So you need to consider exactly.
That's the first click.
Yes. But you need to consider that what you're thinking of doing, nobody has done, because nobody's done it because they're not you.
Yeah.
You know, you are you, and you have a unique take on whatever it is that you want to do. And so by you holding back on something as potentially life-changing to others as what you have in mind, you're robbing other people, I guess, of something that they could benefit from, you know? As long as just one person is impacted by what you're doing something right. And so you're not allowing that one person the right to something that could potentially change their life, you know, or impact their day. I doubt that I'm reaching millions of people with my podcast, but I have had, for now, let's hope, inshallah. But I've had like people reach out to me about the episodes, and they say to me, oh, I really resonated with what you said. And I think, wow, just that one person has had that life-changing impact. Or someone has said, actually, that really touched me. And I'm actually going to talk to my parents about my own mental health now. Finally, I'm going to come out to them about my own mental health. So if you're anxious about doing something, do it anyway. Do it anyway. With my podcast, I was nervous. I was having a meeting with my mentor, and we were just catching up and having a coffee. And we were sat across from each other. And I said to him, I actually want to do a podcast for Mind Pretty Soul. And that was the first time that the word had ever just come out of my mouth. And then I told him my concept, that I wanted to talk to women each month, talk about health, wellness, and just have honest conversations about mental health and about fitness and health and wellness. And he said to me, that's a great idea, and I want to hold you to account. You're gonna do it. And I was literally, my heart was just beating so fast. My hands were just like shaking like that when I told him, and it scared me. And every plan that I made towards that podcast, whether it was booking studio time, reaching out to my guests, buying the rights to my intro music, literally every single step towards that gave me chills. And I was so, and anybody watching this who has a similarly kind of anxiety inducing idea, I would say go for it, honestly. I wouldn't even say spend years and years meticulously planning something. If you've got a top line idea, just carve out how you're going to execute it, but do it, honestly. You never know.
You can always develop.
You never know what can come out from it, honestly. And
develop as well.
Yeah, and no one's ever going to have the spin that you can bring to it. You can bring a fresh perspective to something. There are millions of people with ideas similar to you. Absolutely. You're not the first to do it, and you're not going to be the last, but you're going to have your own take on it. So
if you're own.
You just literally have to value your own insights. And if you think, oh, other people have done it before, then you clearly don't value the insights that you have. You have insights that nobody else has, you know?
It's yours, you know, it's yours, and make your own spin. And I think it was there was a guy that from TED Talk, I don't remember his name, but they were talking about the whole thing of like everything else is taken, every idea is taken. You can always just take an idea, spin it, and then make it your own and run with it, you know, and don't sit there and just think, oh my God, someone else did it, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, in terms of improvement, you can improve, you can develop, you can learn, and you can work with other people. For now, use what you have and get on with that.
Use what you have, exactly.
And like start. But yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for coming as well. It's so nice. Literally talking to you is one of my favorite things. You shouldn't even have a podcast. You should have one-to-one as well on top of the podcast. You know, sign me up. Anything, sign me up. I love what you do. Amazing. Where can they find you? People that are watching.
So you can find me on my few platforms. So my personal Instagram and Twitter as well. Same handle, Hafsa. So HAFSA ISALWE, so Hafsa I Salwe on Twitter and Instagram. And then for Mind Pretty Soul, it's Mind Pretty Soul in one on both Twitter and Instagram. And I forgot to mention, I have another platform type of thing where with my best friend, we talk about herbs and incorporating herbs into everyday cooking. So that's Dish Your Herbs.
Nice.
So we do like foraging in the parks and in the forest for like different herbs, and we cook with them and stuff. So yeah, that
we're going to share that platform as well. Thank you so much for joining me. She's very educational. Please do check her out. She's one of my favorite humans. But then, guys, just disclaimer: everyone that comes on this, I would just be like, this person is my favorite, because I literally people who are doing amazing things, who are incredible and inspiring in their own way. And when it comes to health, when it comes to skin, she knows that she's been doing it for a few years. She worked with big companies, and do email her, do message her, get involved in the podcast, check out her podcast, and hopefully I'll see you next time when we know who to contact when I need some sort of skin person. Yes, you'll be the one to ask. Thank you so much, Hafsa.
Thank you, Ladan.
Bye.